Hello and welcome to the Claret and Blue podcast. It's a The Villa View reunion special here with Dan Bardell and Matt Lynch joining me. Not to talk about that, we're here to talk about Aston Villa transfers today. However, we have just recorded a video for 1874/The Villa View, which I believe is out tomorrow, Dan, Thursday?
Yeah, be out Thursday, I think. I would have thought. Fit into the schedule.
Good reminiscing down memory lane. 10 years of the Villa View, which is crazy.
Stuff I'd forgotten, to be honest. With a lot of stuff that we spoke about.
Yeah, really good though. Good fun to do that. Obviously, it's January transfer window. John and I have done 2 episodes on Monday and Tuesday, a Q&A, and then a bit of a transfer update yesterday. And this is not necessarily a transfer update for Wednesday, but obviously things do move on every day. It looks now like Daniel Marlon will go to Roma. That deal is progressing as we record this at 12:53 on Wednesday. I'm hoping to get this out ASAP, so it's all still in date. And I've not worked out a specific title for this yet, but a kind of analysis of Villa's transfer strategy, something like that is the discussion I want to bring today. Of it all feels a bit random sometimes, it all feels a bit scattergun, not panic necessarily. Diaby joins and within a year he's deemed not to fit the system and goes. Good offer from Saudi, granted. Daniel Marlon joins a year ago today and 1 year later looks like he's about to leave because he doesn't quite fit either. Guess on signs and we all kind of shrug our shoulders and wait and hope that he turns into something good, but so far, 5 months in, not so. Harvey Elliott joins and can't kick a ball because we don't want to sign him permanently. We go for Gallagher and then get gazumped by Spurs, to be fair. We do want Gallagher, but if we don't sign him, do we go for another midfielder? Or was it Gallagher specifically we wanted? Do you know the point I'm trying to raise here, Dan? It all just feels a little bit in the wind and see what happens.
I think it's a bit more kind of cultured than that. Obviously, I think the way it's always been described to me is that it's like a jigsaw puzzle and Villa have to be adaptive. And the reason that it maybe looks a bit scattergun is simply because of PSR and SCR.
I get that, yeah.
In an ideal world, Villa would have this stuff a lot more structured, be able to go and buy the players that they want, offer the money for the player to the club, agree terms with the player, sign them. Unfortunately for us, we're not able to do that. Even when we're on the verge of doing something like we were with Gallagher the other day, something that another club can come and gazump us like Tottenham did, not because they're better than us, but because they've got more flexibility than we have. Yeah. I'm not saying like recruitment's been perfect or anything like that, because, you know, some of the things that you've just mentioned aren't brilliant. And we're lucky that we've just had a core of players over the whole time Emery's been there that we can trust, that he can rely on. The players that a lot of them that were already at the club. The bit that I suppose people will grate people a little bit is the short term ones where you have them for a year and then you let them go, like Diaby, like Marlon. On Marlon, I understand it because there isn't a natural fit for him in the squad. And it sounds like, I don't think he's like agitating to go, but an opportunity's come up and the club have thought, well, he's not first choice. Yeah, he's not first choice from a club perspective, and we want to sign a striker. If we do this deal, we can go and get a striker that's going to be used as a centre forward, and we're happy with that. And also from the player's perspective, I want to play every week. He probably feels a little bit hard done by, I'm going to imagine, because he's largely done well. He's always been in and out, hasn't he? More out than in. He's never had a consistent run in the team. So I guess you never know what's going to happen, particularly in January. And I think that's why it looks a bit more scattergun than it actually is for Villa, because they're forced to be more reactive than proactive. Yeah.
And I'm, for this video, overlooking the positives for obvious reasons. Yeah. Morgan Rogers, obviously very good. Lindelof's turned out to be a shrewd summer signing. Beezot is a good summer signing.
January as well, generally, we've been really good over the 3 years.
Yeah, made a lot of money last January. And it is this period that Unai Emery feels, I need a striker to be a backup or to be a different option for Ollie Watkins. Marlon is not that. He's struggled to play that role without Watkins next to him. Marlon wants to play as a striker, doesn't quite fit Emery's system, and number 10 would be more suited. So if he can go and play, and he wants to go and play, that's fine. But Villa are always kind of hand to mouth of, well, we can't do this deal until we let someone go. And that's a really frustrating thing to be in, because you're always in this cycle then. They find themselves in these awkward positions where if it doesn't quite work out, they can't just go, right, okay, well, we'll just sign a striker anyway and we'll deal with Marlon in 2 years and we'll see if it can work itself out. They have to be like, we've made a bit of a mistake, but we have to go and fix it. Otherwise, we can't change it. We can't bring someone else in. And that shouldn't be the way the rules weren't bought in for that.
The bit you have to remember here as well, that despite the PSR and CSR stuff that you obviously mentioned there, that this is a unique window, I would say, in the sense that I think it's easy to forget there's a World Cup in 6 months' time. And if you're in the position of Marlon, you want to be playing as much football as possible to fort yourself into that first 11 consistently for the Netherlands. And you could argue to a degree might be why Gallagher, I know the big play there is obviously Spurs, London, etc. But the chances are he'll play every week for Spurs. Would he have come in at Villa and played every week? Probably not. If everyone's fit, he wouldn't have done. And again, World Cup on the mind. So it's a unique window in that sense. But I think the bit that I admire with Villa in the sense that we're not, granted we are under the gun, under pressure from the PSR perspective, but we are moving quickly on these assets. We're not letting these depreciating assets, if you like, sit around and then in 3 years' time twiddle our thumbs when we realise we can't shift them on. The fact we are operating in a way whereby we can shift players on so quickly when required is, I'd argue, a very good positive at the moment that we are in a position. And we're in a position where, to fair to degree, Marlon, as you say, has done nothing wrong. So he's made himself more of an attractive proposition. But the fact that there are ready and waiting buyers in that place helps massively as well, that we're not sitting on them for 2 years and then going, oh, we don't think he's right for the system or the fit. We're actually making that decision a lot quicker than perhaps other clubs are, where they have got their assets sat twiddling their thumbs on the bench sort of thing as well.
Yeah, I do think there is some positives into we've made a mistake and we recognise that and we have to fix it, rather than, like you say, trying to just, deal with that later down the line.
I don't know whether you saw that picture of Ollie Watkins' 30th birthday the other day.
Yeah.
Like that group of players is almost just kind of, we know no club would come in for any of them.
So it's like Conser, Cash, Watkins,
there's like a core of players that make up the core of the Villa dressing room and the Villa team.
Yeah.
Rodgers, I'd put in that as well. He was obviously in the photo, even though he's been there slightly less time than everyone else in that picture. But then outside of that, it does almost feel like everyone kind of has a price, which is maybe the way it should be, and maybe that's learning something from like kind of smaller teams, Brighton and Brentford, that maybe every player just kind of does have their price, and we back ourselves to then enter the market and get someone to replace that player. Because really, as I said earlier, the core of the 11 is still just those players that have been there for a long time. So anyone else is almost interchangeable.
What do you think about the strategy in regards to youngsters? So obviously we've signed Madger and Allison this window for relatively decent money, 20-odd million combined. For a team that can't spend loads, that's quite a lot of money to still spend on players that might not necessarily feature in the first team, certainly not immediately anyway. There's also the Europa League squad to think about, which I'll come back to in a second. Philogene, we sell him, realise we've maybe made a mistake in selling him, bring him back, realise it was a mistake to bring him back and sell him again. That's awkward, that's weird. You've got some of the PSR ones of, Dobbin comes in from Everton, goes out on loan.
You have to take them as
that's all different. Cases. That's Villa playing the game by the rules, right? It's if we can sign somebody and sell them, 2 years later for a marginal profit, the way the books work is it's actually a decent profit and they're just playing the game.
I'd argue that I think there's a long-term vision, as you say, in terms of the play, but I think now we have to consider that those two players at those price brackets are actually relatively cheap in today's market. It's not to say that 20 million is cheap in the grand scheme of things, but it is in today's market. So it's actually really low risk to put, put about 9 million behind Allison total, I think it was. They reckon it was around that sort of number. It's actually small change in comparison to the payoff. If it pays off in a great way and Allison comes on a lot more than we anticipate, then he'll force his way into that team, as we'd sort of anticipate. Or if he doesn't, it's
you're going to make
chances are you're going to make more than 9 million back on him. Absolutely. So it's a smart play, and I think that we've got to box smarter. But I think that it's what we're doing. But equally, there's an expectation that needs to be set to fans as a collective as such, to recognise that when we are pining for Redmond to come back from Huddersfield to come and sit on the bench, the reality is that's not going to happen. There's a bigger sort of vision at play there that is sometimes beyond Villa. I mean, we've seen that with Ozcan Anderlecht, for example. We saw him kick a ball at Walsall in a friendly, and then we've not seen him since, and he's on with a view to a permanent at Anderlecht, isn't he? So there's these sorts of players that will come and go, but it's the nature of the beast and the game we've got to play to be able to afford your lavish signings of your Ananas in this world and your Marlon. At that moment in time, we signed Marlon. Granted, that was offset by Duran, but you get where I'm going with that one.
Yeah.
And you can probably bundle Redmond into that picture. Granted, he was a free transfer, barring his small compensation fee because he was a youth player. you can bundle him in that same category as Alisson and Madra in terms of probably where his career trajectory will be. Granted, he was a final first-team player, as was Madra in France. He was a first-team player. So it's clear that it's going to be Emery's going to make that judgment whether they're good enough to usurp the likes of Hemmings and who else has been on the bench, Burrows in recent time that has sort of forced their way onto the bench in terms of Villa's setup.
Although 10 million is a lot of money, in transfer fees, really, it's not, and that's amortised over the period of the contract. They won't be on high wages. Like, you almost just have to trust them and look at the young signings that they're making as being a completely separate thing to what they're doing with the first team. Now, I do think Alisson will be on the bench at some point in the coming weeks, probably maybe even the weekend, especially if Marder's going to depart without anyone else coming in beforehand. You'll probably see him on the bench at the weekend. But it's just the game, as you said. Now, Villa, if we weren't doing things like this and taking chances and almost flipping players or then promoting them to the first team where they go up in value, they've got to do it. And it's what other teams have done for years. Like, if we didn't do it, we'd be probably accused of being behind the times a little bit and not adapting. So we almost just have to do it, and we are.
Dan, can I ask you about my theory about the market dictating the cost of transfers? I always say it's the club that is buying your player that dictates the price, whereas I often get thrown back at me, well, Villa don't sell very well. They don't demand high enough fees. So Kessler Hayden went to Coventry for 3 million or something, was it? Could be argued he's worth more than that. Who's the one at the moment? Is it Finlay Munro?
Finlay Munro's going for 350k.
Surely he's worth more than that. And I get there might be a sell-on fee or buyback clauses and all different things that makes this complicated. But the natural reaction to that is, surely we can shift these talented youngsters for more than £300,000. Like, what's the point of that? But if no one's willing to pay £1 million for Finlay Munro, what are Villa supposed to do?
Exactly.
Like, it's up to the clubs buying your players. They will only spend what they're willing to spend.
Yeah, and look, if Villa thought he was worth more than that, they would ask for more, or they wouldn't sell him for that price. I think you've got to look at it as in now the teams in the EFL and football's got a problem here. Unless you've had the parachute payments and you've been in the Premier League recently, the teams don't have any money. They can't afford to go and buy young players for millions and millions of pounds, and it wouldn't be sensible for them to do that. I think Villa look at it as in, we're better off selling him for 350k, putting in a 30% profit proceeds of the next fee come back to us, or 30-40% of the profit or whatever, or we buy them back for a couple of million and then sell them for more in the future. I think Villa are looking at it more from that point of view than the actual fee. Now, the actual fee now is almost meaningless. Like, he isn't going to get into our first team right now or probably in the next couple of years. So you're better off having him at a club in the Championship like Middlesbrough who will play him, and he's only going to go up in value, in which case, if he does, Villa will buy him back, or they'll get a take of the proceeds. So I actually think it's quite sensible. And, you know, you're saying he's worth more than 350,000. Is he? Like,
well, I don't know, but the
in the lower reaches of the EFL, he's probably not worth more than that.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. The only bit I'd add there is that you have to consider, as Dan rightly points out, there's not much money in the Championship, and there's no point us having players kicking around in our youth setup and playing under 23s football once a week.
They're not going up in value.
No, they're just going to sit at that value. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if we see a similar scenario pan out with Rory Wilson before too long. I don't know what his trajectory is going to look like, but the chances are he'll end up in that same picture. I think Hemmings is a different case because he's already broke that sort of mould, if you like, but there's a certain level of player that's in our youth setup that will quite happily push out. I mean, there's O'Reilly, isn't there, that's out on loan at the moment. Probably a similar scenario will pan out there come the summer. Just off the top of my head, there's other ones as well that have gone more recently. Sinsalo's obviously now at Celtic. We shifted him eventually when everyone thought he was going to be the next big thing. But so far, I have to say, we've been proven right in terms of decisions Emery's made in terms of youth prospects. There's been nobody in the last few years we've shipped out and sold permanently that's set the world alight up, pulled up trees to the point where we've bought them back just yet, is there, to be honest with you? I mean, Philogene came back, but I must admit, you'd have asked me on a pointless question of who started the Bayern Munich game is the one name I wouldn't remember. I can't question any decision that Villa have made in terms of youth prospects in the last couple of years. I thought Finn of Zaz was going to be one, but I've not seen that suggest so, to be honest. So
I'll say any sale. Douglas Luiz hasn't had a great time since leaving. Neither's John Duran, Diego Carlos. You know, we've sold well, and we've sold well at the right time, which is why Villa say, and me and John always say, okay, if we sell, and I hate to say it, as an example, if we sold Yuri Tielemans next summer, I would hate that because I think he's a brilliant player, but we've got a good track record of selling players at the right time, and you'd have to trust that we replace them in the right way.
Even
Ramsey, another good example.
Yeah, exactly.
One of the big, obviously, conversations is SCR rather than PSR. That we've had Champions League money, we've got better sponsorships. PSR isn't. Not that it's not the issue because it's always there, but the SCR rules are so much harder to comply with. Bringing your wage to revenue ratio down has to be 70% to comply with UEFA. Villa have already been punished before because they can't get to 70% because their wages are still too high for the amount of income they bring in, which is the rules I still think are outdated, but there we are. Players like Maja and Alisson for 19, 20 million sounds like a lot. But when you think of the SCR side of things, their wages will be so minimal. Daniel Marlon is earning way more than both of those two combined. Very complicated and annoying.
They've done a couple of clever things as well, Villa, that have gone under the radar, like Mings and Luca Dean's contracts. They've been given a good length of contract on less money rather than lesser years' worth of contracts on the same money. So they're probably still making the same amount of money, but for us, from a sustainability rule and the SCR stuff, it's less outlay per year. So we are trying. I do think when people throw, we've had all these sponsorships and so that's a myth, and I'm sure that will come out at some point. That stuff's not really any better than it's ever been.
Other thing I mentioned before, Europa League squad. Now, obviously, because of Daniel Marlon, we all remember last year's Champions League squad, and there was a long back and forth always that, well, if you sign 5 players and you lose 5 players, you should be able to put 5 players back into the squad. But we were always consistent because John was told by UEFA, you can only put 3 back in. So Villa's Europa League squad, whatever they do this window, they'll still be hamstrung by those same rules.
Isn't it more flexible now? You can make, because I think so. Because Barkley was out of the squad at the start of the season, wasn't he? And then Mings got injured, and we were able to just take Mings out and put Barkley in. So you can be quite fluid with it now. Okay,
well, if that's the case, that completely kills my point. What me and John were talking about was, well, what happens with the signings? Because Marlon will obviously go out of it. He will be replaced and you'll bring somebody in. But if you still can only have that 3 limit, how does that work?
I don't think that's the thing anymore. I could be wrong, but I honestly don't think that's the thing anymore. You can make changes now on a game-by-game basis to your squad as well.
Can you? I'm going to have to go back to John Townley for this one.
The squad in the first place, then.
Is that different if it's injury related?
I think it has to be injury related. In fairness, yeah.
Right. I was going to say, there'd be no point in submitting a squad otherwise.
Yeah.
They're at that point.
So I think the squad submission things at the halfway point will be based on new players. So I'd actually forgotten about the Mings thing. I thought Mings would potentially be one of the 3 to come back in, because obviously he wasn't in it to begin with because of his injury. So that would take up a slot as well. But if he's already in for Barkley on an injury thing.
It was the other way, but it was the other way around. Barkley came in for Mings, but now Barkley's not. So it's complicated.
Needlessly complicated, really. And again, probably things that we shouldn't really be too concerned about. On the whole, I think Villa's transfer business is good. More often than not, I think there's more hits than misses over the years. Do you disagree, Dan?
He's probably at about 50-50. But it almost hasn't mattered because that core of players, again, have just been so strong. And the manager that we have is so good at just extracting extra from players. But
there's still the confusion around different things. Because we always say nothing happens without Emery say-so. I can't imagine any manager agreeing to the Harvey Elliott deal. That's the one I can't get my head around.
There's a reason Monchi left.
But I just don't know how or why we thought that was a good idea. And obviously Harvey Elliott is still here as of today. I don't know what happens with that either. Liverpool clearly don't want to bring him back, or at least not yet. They want to wait till the end of the window. Does that impact Villa's options in January as well? He takes up a squad slot. Like, it's so murky is a good word for how I feel about Villa's business.
Emery, although he might get the say on players, he's not involved in the specifics of a deal. I can't imagine that he would have signed off that 10-game clause.
That's what I mean, yeah.
That's something that's been thrust on him after he said he's okay with the signing, albeit we would all know that wouldn't have been his first choice. And then after he's okayed it, the terms of the deal have been done and it's plays 10 games and signs for a certain amount of money, and he's gone, well, wait there. I didn't say I wanted to sign him permanently. I said I wanted him on loan. So yeah, I think murky is definitely the right word to describe it all. But feasibly, you would think Villa had 30/35 million to spend on a player in June. And that won't get spent now. They might not be able to use that 35 million in January, would it enable them? It would have enabled them to get Conor Gallagher in, and I imagine that's what that was.
Yeah. That's exactly how I see it as well. There'll be something done. As you see a lot of like, well, let Marlon go. Well, we need him. Potentially for Everton, I can't imagine we signed somebody before then, although obviously things change very, very quickly. But it's like, but the window's not closed yet. I can't let Marlon go. It's a disgrace. He's contributed. Well, he'll be replaced, won't he?
Yeah, they wouldn't let Marlon go unless they were signing a centre forward. Absolutely no chance.
And the centre forward might not come in yet because Marlon's got to go first, but it will happen.
Yeah, it's a long window, and we've seen Villa be very proactive in the last days of a window in January previously. So there's no point losing your mind on the 14th of January because you have to just wait to see the way you're set at the end of a window. And we all lost our minds in the last transfer window. We're third.
Exactly.
It's literally pointless.
Yeah, we probably will do the deadline day stream that we did in the summer. I think we might do another one in January. So if both of you want to come back and do a half an hour stint on a live stream on deadline day, whether Villa are busy or not on the day, we can discuss the window as a whole. If between now and then you had to make a prediction on what kind of business you might see from Villa, not specifically names, but maybe additions in terms of numbers, how different do you think we'll look, Matt, come February 1st or 2nd?
I think it's obviously clear there'll be a backup to Watkins. It's just in what shape or mould that is. And obviously, Tammy Abraham's been talked about, and I'm sure obviously you discussed that prior about what Tammy is and what he is now in comparison to what we saw with him when he was last at Villa and the time that he's had. And that excites me just because of perhaps my brain goes towards that playoff season rather than what we've seen from him since, in truth. But the to have as a backup, I think, is a very good option nonetheless. So I think that's paramount, absolutely. It's clear we need backup in that midfield ranks because we seem to be struggling with general fitness across Onana and Camera. I think it's harsh to probably ban Tielemans in that category because he was so consistent for us in terms of games in the last 18 months prior to this season. So for me, there needs to be another body in that middle of midfield, and to a degree, you have to look at it and go, well, if Elliott does happen to leave, there's a space there that looks very appetising. And I'll hark back to that World Cup thing, but I think there's still an opportunity where we may pull something out of the hat, much like we did with Asensio and Rashford, in the sense of that loan signing towards the back end of the window, where it comes to it and there's a player somewhere. Not sure who, because obviously I'm on the hop in terms of that question, but there's bound to be a player that's not even on our radars at this moment in time in terms of a household name, if you will, that could
needs
potentially be on that part, that needs game time to get themselves in a World Cup squad for whatever nation it may be come the end of May.
Dan, do you remember at the Hockey Live show when I ended the show with like, could we maybe sign a midfielder in January? And we were all like, nah, we don't need one, do we? And I was like, well, Barkley gets injured, Onana gets injured, Kamara gets injured, and that's now all happened. And Villa are linked with midfielders when we kind of laughed it off as, nah, surely not.
I do. It was fair. It's more me that laughed it off. Actually, it was your idea, wasn't it?
I'll find the clip somewhere. Then
I kind of laughed it off. Or I would say, when everyone's fit in the 20-man squad, Elliott wouldn't have been in the 20. So I'm looking at it as in Alisson's taking his place, and then I would say that what goes out must come in. So if someone goes out, someone is coming in, and vice versa. If someone's coming in, someone is going out. So there'll be a replacement for Marlon. If anyone else goes, there will be a replacement for them. If anyone else comes in, someone goes.
So you think the Gallagher was an opportunity of it was Conor Gallagher and not just we want a midfielder?
I think someone would have been going out from the midfield area.
Oh, that's interesting.
If Gallagher comes in, for example, Ross Barkley goes out to Wolves. That would be my thinking with it.
Yeah, okay, that's interesting.
20 players form part of your matchday squad, and when everyone was fit, that's what we had. And Elliott wasn't in the 20. I think Alisson then becomes the spare man. Remember, like Bogard, when everyone's fit, if you looked at it, maybe he doesn't get on the bench. Like, although he was in the 20 actually when Elliott was fit and everyone was fit, and he did get on the bench and was the reason why Elliott didn't. I think he's grown into a more important member of the squad than maybe he was part of the season. So I think
Garcia misses out there.
Yeah, I think Alisson and Garcia are the two spare men at the moment. But then anything in that 20 that goes out, someone's coming in. That's the way I would look at it. Yeah,
and neither of you think we're going to lose anybody that we don't want to lose?
I don't think it'd be a big sale, no.
No, I can't envisage it, no.
Okay, same. Okay, right, gents, thank you very much for joining me for a half an hour transfer chat. Hopefully people have enjoyed it. If you have, let us know and get involved with your thoughts in various comment sections as well. Keep an eye on the 1874/The Villa View channel tomorrow for a reminisce down memory lane. We'll be back next on this channel for some Everton build-up content or some transfer stuff if news breaks. Who knows? Things move very quickly. Matt Lynch, thank you for joining me. Dan Bardell, thank you too. Thank you for watching or listening, and we'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.